I am Linda Ahlstrom, and I'm here presenting my project. I did a project called A Novel Approach to S&P 500 Stock Prediction using an encoder and decoder with RL to improve the forecasting of time-varying volatility in financial time series data. So this was a fun project. And basically the idea behind it is if we can use these models and this forecasting capability to help us in decision making, we have more time to do the things that we want to do. For many years, these things have been used at, and stock market prediction has been a very exciting area and something that has interested people for quite a long time. So volatility is a measure for the levels of uncertainty prevailing in financial markets. And investors tend to have a really strong focus on risk management for good reason, and optimizing trading decisions using returns weighted by risk is really crucial. The main goal of most investors is to achieve the maximum revenue potential from the strategies that they choose to follow. The S&P 500 is a widely recognized benchmark of the U.S. stock market, and it has the potential of forecasting values of the financial time series we see there. So this project was kind of broken up into stages, and initially I planned on using GARCH synthetic data as my data input, and I wanted to use that. I thought it would allow me some extra leverage, but the move to S&P 500 data was seamless, and it really, in the end, I realized that that was just fine to just use real historical data. And then the next stage of this project was to develop a VAE and using an encoder and decoder to work with the data. And I was really happy with the results of that as well. Kind of as an afterthought, I decided to incorporate RL. So RL was an addition, so reinforcement learning was kind of tacked on to what I got started with the VAE. As I added the reinforcement learning portion, I started with a DQN, but then I was introduced to a paper, the Dreamer World Model, and that was really exciting because it showed using a PPO and more modern techniques, using an actor and critic, using those types of RL techniques to work with an autoencoder and decoder. So those references are will be included in my final report. But again, the Dreamer World Model was really an exciting discovery for me and took this project in an even different direction. So just to kind of go over some terms, the VAE is a variational autoencoder, and as described, it's an encoder that takes in a lot of parameters and then reduces that down to, reduces all the parameters down, and then in the end decodes that back so you have all the parameters that were given as input parameters. Now the catch for this project is it's a forecasting project, so the input parameters, the concept is we're going to take input parameters, reduce them down with the encoder, and then with the decoder regenerate the input parameters plus 1 day, our forecasting day. So we're getting even more out than what was put in. Then RL, reinforcement learning, is a great way for taking action. And in this project, it's kind of helping us with that decision, the buy, sell, hold decision being made. And so using the actor and critic, we've implemented RL to the project process. This project is uses S&P 500 data, and it takes this data over a historical window, and then the project was to, with this project, I built a VAE, autoencoder and decoder, and then I coupled that with RL. And the concept of combining techniques in hopes of improving forecasting performance is something that was kind of, I guess, highlighted in the research paper that I presented to the class. In that paper, they showed how a combination of lots of models being used together can incorporate the best, I guess, the advantages of each of the models when they're teamed up together. And so kind of that concept is what I did with using the VAE combined with RL. And the idea was that combining those two, I could get the advantages of both. The RL is great at action, so making the buy, hold, sell decisions was kind of its job, and then the VAE helped with the forecasting process. Anyway, I think the combination turned out well. And also something that was pointed out in the research paper I presented is sensitivity analysis from past work kind of motivates us to look for robust model selection. And I think combining two techniques really helps us be more robust in the final product and how well it can handle variances in the data. And this project focuses on stability in real-world forecasting. So GARCH, as I mentioned, was used. I'm really glad that I got to know more about GARCH. It was really fun to learn about, and it's a fantastic model. I was very impressed at what it could do and how easy it was to work with. And basically GARCH, the GARCH, stands for Generalized Autoregressive Conditional Heteroscedasticity. And this model is really great for predicting financial markets. It's been known as a statistical tool that's been around for a while. It's been widely used to forecast the volatility of time series data and especially financial markets. And so it captures volatility clustering and periods where high or low volatility events cluster together, and it allows the conditional variance to depend on past squared residuals and past errors, and using the past conditional variance. So the GARCH model works well at looking at the variance that is very typical in time series data and helps to model very similar volatility that we traditionally see in time series data, particularly the stock market. Okay, when I set up the VAE, this was kind of the layout of the layers. So I had an encoder with an input layer, and then two ReLU layers, and then an output. And then once everything was condensed down and it was time to regenerate the original parameters in an output format, I used the decoder. And so we look at that with the decoder had an input layer, two ReLU layers again, and an output layer. And then the output was always the data set, like I said, everything coming into the encoder, plus one more day. Another thing that was used was the Henkel matrix. The Henkel has all its diagonal lines are consistent numbers, and so we use that. Another technique was a cumulative sum. I used that so that the output always showed kind of like a stock market looking graph that was easy to relate to. So every output was added to the last, and so we had kind of the cumulative sum that showed a stock market looking trend. Epochs, I chose 500 epochs for this project. And then the data set was separated into 75% training, and then the remainder was used for test. And so with that split, 75% to 25%, I think that worked well. The way that it worked was we took 6,000 days at a time, so 6,000 days were fed in and then divided up into mini batches of 30. And so once it was separated into these separate mini batches, 30 at a time, in the end there's usually a few days that kind of provided a remainder. That data was thrown out, and so then we'd go and we'd get the next 6,000 days separated into mini batches of 30, throw out any remainder days that didn't come out to an even 30. So for the RL portion of this, this is where the kind of the action happens, the decision between buy, sell, and hold. And basically after the decoder, a reward was assigned, and the reward was given 1 for a buy, -1 for a sell, and 0 for a hold. So the process ended up with the S&P 500 historical data coming into the encoder, running through the encoder. Once it was reduced down, that's where the PPO was used to process everything, and then it went through the decoder after that RL process, and then out of the decoder a reward was assigned. And so that was kind of the process followed with the project. And then for robustness evaluation, noise injection was used through domain randomization or noise injection. This was just done to test the robustness and make sure we were still getting results that we liked. Noise injection to test robustness was added with an independent small Gaussian variable, and the results were good from that. So TensorFlow was used. Everything was divided up into layers. VAE was chosen. I liked the autoencoder decoder model. I could have chosen a GRU, used a gated recurrent unit, but VAE won out. I was most familiar with that, and I was happy with the performance, so I think it ended up to be a good choice. The optimizer was ADAM, so adaptive moment estimation, and ADAM weighs updates to minimize loss. So again, we had batch sizes of 30, the epochs were 500, and the model was, the model was saved out to a file, and then it was loaded and tested. Things I would change in the future, I think, knowing what I know now, I would skip trying the Garch. I'm glad I did. I learned a lot, and I was very happy with what it did, but to do it over again, I would probably skip that portion. I think if I had it to do over again, I would have thrown reinforcement learning into this whole process earlier. I'm really excited with what came out of that world model. If I had read that paper before the semester started, I probably would have just dove in using RL with a VAE, but in the end, that's what I did. I'm really excited that I came across this paper during the process, and very happy with the output. So I guess further work would be to add more days. That was recommended and also contemplated when I gave my initial project presentation. I was asked by the professor, do you want to add 7 days? I said, yeah, I'll try, but I'm guaranteeing 1 day. Well, it turned out I only got to the 1 day, but in the future I would like to expand and try 7 days. What does 7 days look like? What kind of performance can I get with 30 days? So that would be something fun. I guess I guess there's just different things in the future that I could tweak. One that comes to mind is maybe giving like trade sale, like a percentage price for buying for every trade that's made. I didn't go to that complication with this initial run, but maybe that could be factored in. It's really a fun thing to look at. Time series data has a lot of aspects and ways that you could look at different things. It's been fun to work on and really great learning and exposure to this financial forecasting environment and what can be done with neural networks. Thank you.